TCU Basketball avoided a bad loss on Wednesday, winning in Morgantown for the first time ever. Bad West Virginia team, but still had to have that victory. Not quite a lot for the NCAA tournament next. What else do they have to do? We'll talk about it here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're coming up on 1,100 subscribers, which is cool. Also, subscribe on your favorite podcast app wherever you listen to podcasts the old-fashioned way in its audio form. TCU Basketball, 93-81 victory over West Virginia on Wednesday night in Morgantown. The Frogs improved their record to an outstanding 1-11 in that gym. But seriously, yes, this is a bad West Virginia team. It's a game you had to win. Still, nice bounce back after that debacle against BYU where they blew a huge lead. Had a big lead at halftime in this ball game. Really got off to a great start, which was nice to see. They're up 53-38 at halftime. Gave up 43 points to West Virginia. The defense continues to struggle. I'll say this. The Ernest Uday injury situation is still very strange to me. I know he, according to media reports, he participated in shoot-around yesterday. So he was at least involved in, morning workout, going through those drills, getting the ball up a little bit. But he's been dealing with this ankle injury, hasn't been available since midway through the Tech game. And maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I just thought the way that Jamie Dixon has phrased this has been strange by saying it's up to him. I mean, my understanding is typically these things are up to the medical staff and the coaching staff. Maybe it's just a pain tolerance thing. And what he meant by that is like, hey, simply – it's just about if this guy can handle it, and he's going to go through warm-ups and practices and let us know exactly where he's at and what he can do. Ernest has been, I think, a source of frustration at times because it was such a big deal when they landed him in the transfer portal. And I'm not sure what our best expectations were, but he's not like a true back-to-the-basket scorer. Not that there are a lot of those guys in college basketball in general anymore. I mean, he's going to get some points, but it's going to be mainly rolling to the rim, in pick-and-roll situations, alley-oops, that type of thing. He dealt with foul trouble a lot in non-conference play, so his minutes were really choppy to start the year. His absence, though, has been felt, and mainly it's on the defense side of the ball, just the connectiveness of the defense, rim protecting, all those things. But this team struggles defensively when he's not on the floor, and it's pretty imperative they get him back for postseason play. I said this in the cold open as we started here. That win makes sure that you get to 500 in Big 12 play. They're at 9-8. They play UCF at home, which UCF has had some good moments this year, but they're 6-11 in conference play. They got a couple guards, Jalen Sellers, Darius Johnson, who can score. Sellers is averaging 16 points a game, Johnson 14 points a game. That feels like a game, though, at home. Hopefully you can take care of your business. If they do that, they'll be 10-8 in conference play, which – it's a very slight improvement, but it does kind of get them out of the cycle of 9-9 conference seasons that we've seen year after year here lately under Jamie Dixon. Puts them over 500 in conference play. I'm still kind of shocked. I was looking around at bracketology today. Joe Lunardi has TCU as one of the last 4 buys, so he doesn't have them going to Dayton. They're just outside of that. But if you lose to UCF and then you lose to whoever it is in round 1 of the conference tournament, whether it's Kansas State or somebody else. And I say Kansas State because they put up a graphic during the game last night that if the season had ended before those results last night, that they would have played Kansas State. But there's still a lot of different variables that could play out in the last day of the season. If you lose your last 2, then I feel like you're kind of sweating it on Selection Sunday, which is stupid to me because I think even though the Big 12, it doesn't feel top to bottom as deep as it has the last few seasons. Houston won the league last night, which is a heck of an accomplishment for Kelvin Sampson's crew in year 1. But if you go 500 in this league and you got some good wins on your resume like Houston and Baylor, in my mind, you should be in. Like, there really shouldn't be a question about it. Now, are you a lower seed? Sure. But you should be in the tournament. And, yeah, non-conference schedule doesn't help. would it be better if they scheduled some tougher teams? It would, but honestly, they played poorly in non-conference play. I mean, the two teams they played that were good were Nevada and Clemson. So I guess you could argue if they played some better competition to start the year, they could have gotten beat and had some more losses on the resume. Now, yeah, there's always the cat and mouse game of, well, if they played better competition, would they be prepared better for bigger teams, faster teams, all those things, possibly. But bottom line is you put yourself in a situation where you take care of business on Saturday at home, and really regardless what happens in the Big 12 tournament, I think you feel good about where you're at. CBS Bracketology has them as a 9 seed, playing FAU, who was in the Final Four last year, and then if they won that game, they would get UConn, which that would be a tough draw. That 8-9 line is tough because you played the 1 seed in round 2. I guess in some ways you could argue it would be better if you ended up as a 10, or even though you'd have to go to Dayton presumably as an 11 seed, the play-in game, then a 6 seed, then a 3 seed. That does seem like a better path in some ways. Bottom line is they're on the verge here of making the tournament for the 3rd year in a row. First time that's happened in school history. And I think that means something. Like, it doesn't mean you go give Jamie Dixon a 10-year extension. No. But, I mean, that's significant, right? And the cool thing about this is if they make the postseason, at the moment, would I predict that they go very far? No. But it gives them the opportunity to do that. They need Ernest Udeh back, though, because they're really struggling in the interior when he's not there. Last night, Jesse Edwards had 36 points and 13 boards. And he could have had more because he got to the line at will. He was 15 of 19 from the field. He was 6 of 18 from the free throw line. Edwards has a really this might be a weird phrase. He has a very aesthetically pleasing game to me, like his game. The way he plays, like he's got the wrist tape. He's got his wrist taped up. He just looks like very old school. He's playing with his back to the basket. He shoots free throws with one hand now. He was 6 of 18 last night. So, he obviously struggled from the charity stripe. But it's just kind of unique to see him playing the way he does in this era of basketball. That being said, West Virginia's 9-21, so maybe that tells you don't build the whole ship around a big man like that unless you got, a 7-footer like Zach Edey in Purdue. But he went off. And Xavier Court dealt with some foul trouble. And it wasn't just him. I mean, West Virginia was able to get to the rim, and that's been a pretty consistent feature since Udeh went down. It seems to kind of get what they want in the paint, dribble penetration, get into the lane. And so they need him back. I don't know if the plan is like, let's make sure he's 100% good to go for a Big 12 tournament into the NCAA. But I hope they can get him in the lineup this weekend simply because I'd like to see him get a few game reps in before postseason play starts. Bottom line is you need him available because his defense really makes a difference. And I think he helps the guards too because he does draw some gravity from bigs on the other side of the ball. And hopefully that will lead to some more open shots. Offensively, TCU was super efficient last night. I mean, 93 points speaks for itself. They shot the ball well, 47% from three-point range, a lot of that in the first half. One of their best shooting days in the season. I think they hit 9 3-pointers in the first half of that ball game. Emmanuel Miller led the way with 21 points, super efficient night, 8 of 13. Micah Peavy looked more aggressive with 16 points. I think the thing with Micah, honestly, at this point, he's good against bad teams. Like, he can assert himself offensively against some of the lesser teams in the Big 12. I think, teams that can match his athleticism and have players that can stay with him off the dribble and force him to take more contested shots and more jump shots, you don't necessarily expect him to have a great night, but it was good to see him be more assertive on that side of the ball. Chuck O'Bannon had a good shooting night. He was 4 of 8 from the field, 3 of 5 from three-point land, 11 points. Jacoby Coles was kind of quiet, but he did have a big bucket late in that ball game. So really balanced scoring night, did everything well. Avery Anderson continues to struggle on the other side of the ball. It'd be really nice if they could find a way to get him going before postseason starts. Shamir Nelson had a good day offensively. So overall, nice victory, handled your business, bounced back from that BYU loss. UCF, Big 12 tournament, and then you just kind of see where you fall in the NCAA tournament. And, man, it would be super fascinating. I don't want this to happen, but to see how the selection committee would handle them if they ended up 9-9 in conference play and had an early exit in the Big 12 tourney. But I don't want that to go down. I just want this to be pretty cut and dry, get them in the tournament. Hopefully they get a decent draw, and we'll see where they go from there. This team next year will be fascinating. I honestly think, and not to get too much into it because we got basketball left to play here, but You're losing Emmanuel Miller. You're probably losing Micah Peavy. I mean, I just feel like his stock's not going to get much higher. He's been playing basketball for a while. Hopefully get Jacoby Coles back, but you'll get Coles back, Ernest Uday, and then you got a couple young freshmen who are talented, haven't played this year. Isaiah Manning and Jace Posey. Hopefully those guys will stick around through the offseason. And then a really talented incoming freshman class. So it'll be the first time in a while. I mean, we've seen Jamie rework his roster through the portal, and I think they'll be active in the portal again. But it's been a while since we saw a team with a young nucleus under his direction. Really haven't seen that since a few years back when they had Miles and Ball. And, I mean, it wasn't a super young team, but a number of transfers around those guys that they had gone and gotten. And so it was a new core of players. So I'm kind of wondering what their identity is, what their style of play is going to be. But first things first, which is this season, and they've got to handle their business against the Central Florida Knights coming up on Saturday. TCU women, they play at 1:30 on Friday in the opening round of the Big 12 tournament against Oklahoma State. They lost the regular season matchup to Oklahoma State at home, but that was right after Sonona Prince went down. Madison Connor did play in that game. Sonona Prince wasn't available. I don't think Sydney Harris played in that game either. If they win that ball game, they'll have a really tough test playing Oklahoma the next day, and Oklahoma won the Big 12 regular season title in women's basketball. But I will say they played the Sooners pretty competitively on the road in Norman, and that was still when they were working with the team that had come back, kind of the skeleton crew that had come back from the forfeits. But anyway, if the women are going to make the tournament, they have to win the Big 12 championship. And we'll see about the NIT if that doesn't happen. But a couple wins, I think, could go a long way, and at least giving them a shot to make the postseason. When we come back on yesterday's episode, I talked about realignment, Big 12, Big 10. I did that show with Tommy Fisher, and somebody brought up a good question, or I wanted to clarify something. So I'll talk about that next. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Have you ever heard of Amazon Fire TV? I love Amazon Fire TV. I got a Fire Stick for our TV upstairs. Got all the apps there, Netflix, ESPN, so I can watch TCU basketball, baseball on ESPN Plus. It's really convenient, great setup, super easy to get going. Fire TV is your destination for sports, live games, the highlights, and in-depth analysis. They offer amazing viewing experience with smart TVs, as well as a Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live television. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels that deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at the Locked On and most of big professional sports leagues and college conferences as well. So we have a Locked On Sports Fire TV channel that lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep you up to date in the latest in the world of sports. If you haven't tried this out, you should. Check it out. Visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Again, that's Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Check out Fire TV today. All the great channels they have. It's your sports destination. We appreciate Amazon Fire TV for sponsoring us here on the Locked On Network. So on Wednesday's show, I had Tommy Fisher on the program, and we talked about realignment. And really, we dove into, okay, where does TCU sit in the new world of college sports? There was a report from James Yoder of Chat Sports about a week ago where he discussed that the Big Ten was reportedly looking to expand before the 2026 season. And if they did that, they had a list of schools that they were interested in. The top of the top was Notre Dame. Like, that's where they were looking first. If that didn't work out for some reason, then they were going to go Florida State and then potentially TCU. And there were some other schools involved in that, but TCU was high on the list, according to that report, if the Big Ten decided to expand. And so I talked with Tommy about where TCU is in the Big 12 from a TV viewership standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, a monetary value place. And he discussed that one thing that he's concerned about is with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, there's not as many big games on the schedule, like games that are going to create national attention for TCU, because while those programs haven't always been at the top of the league, Oklahoma was for the most part while they were in the Big 12. But they always created conversation. It was always a big game for TCU when they played those schools. Let me see if I can find – oh, man, I just closed out what I was looking for. So I'll have to dance here for a second. I'm sorry. Bear with me. But one of the comments, I believe, was from Jim Norris. But I guess I should look at that before I start talking and getting into it. And if you haven't checked out yesterday's episode with Tommy Fisher, I encourage you to do that. But yeah, that's from Jim Norris. He said, Steven, I don't know how Texas could still be considered an elite program when they've been in the toilet for 10 years. Last year being the only exception. During that time, TCU was the winningest program in Texas. Yeah, so my point about Texas was this. I mean, from a win-loss perspective, yes, for the most part, they have been down. Now, they've been down by Texas standards. Like, they've had a few 5-7 seasons, but by and large, they've been a bowl team. But certainly compared to historically what Texas has done, they have been down in the dumps. Now, last season, they made the college football playoff. I actually think with Steve Sarkisian, they're moving in the right direction. And with NIL becoming, above board and Texas being allowed to kind of flex their muscles spending-wise, they're building this thing from the inside out, meaning they've gone heavy on investing in offensive and defensive line help, and then building, skilled players, quarterbacks, all that around the interior of the team, which I believe is going to be more sustainable and successful for them moving forward. But the point I was making about Texas, you're right, they haven't been an elite program, and I said that. In the context of the national narrative, though, it was still a big game. And what Tommy was getting at was, from a recruiting standpoint, these high school players want to play in big games. So having those kind of benchmark games on the schedule was a benefit for TCU recruiting-wise. I think from a media exposure angle, it was good too. And the example I used was a few years ago. TCU played Texas in Austin on their way to an undefeated regular season. Now, was Texas the best team they played that year? No. I think Kansas State was, at least in the Big 12, and they went on to play Michigan and Georgia, who were better than everybody. They beat Michigan. We know what happened against Georgia. But even though that Texas team was not, a college football playoff team, they were underdogs in that game. It was a national game on ABC, prime time, right? And they won an ugly football game. And in a lot of people's minds, that was what put TCU like, okay, they're here to stay. They're in the conversation for the rest of the season. Now, was that right? No, probably not. People should have noticed after they beat Oklahoma State and Kansas State, this was a really good football team. I just am concerned. Like, I think the Big 12 is going to be a good league. I think there's going to be a lot of parity in the league. I'm glad that everybody is on board with the future of the conference, rowing the boat together, pulling the same rope, all those things. I feel like there's some good rivalries that are going to form over the years. The biggest games on TCU's schedule this year: at Utah, Oklahoma State, maybe at Kansas, and home against Arizona. And I'm looking at that from a win-loss perspective, not like, obviously, yeah, Texas Tech, Baylor, big rivalry games, want to go win those games. SMU want to go win that game. But I'm thinking about the games that are going to get the most attention, and it'll be the biggest games, like hopefully games that have conference title implications. And I'm very curious to see like how those games are covered, what type of exposure they get, how much respect TCU gets if they can pull off some wins, some victories in those ball games. And honestly, it's again kind of goes back to what you want TCU to be is how you can view these things. Like, you don't have to care about like athletics revenue. You don't have to care about what conference TCU's in. I know a lot of you are just like, I just want the team to win. I'm in the same boat. I also just want TCU to win. Whatever level of college football they end up playing in or whatever conference they're in, I just want them to win. I want them to be playing for conference titles and win as many games as possible. That's my biggest concern. I think they're going to do a good job of putting a team out there that's competitive and that can do that year in and year out. I just hope they don't get left behind in the world of college sports in the next few years. And if they do, I'm still going to be doing the podcast. I'm still going to be passionate about it. Like, it's not going to change how I cover this, the teams, all that. I do think that's a legit concern, though. So when I was talking about Texas, it wasn't so much that I think they've been an elite program over the past decade, even though I feel like they're trending in the right direction. It's just the idea of that was a game that you knew a lot of eyes were going to be on TCU. And if they could win, it was good for the program. And so I hope they still have consistently games like that on the schedule. They're going to draw a lot of national attention so that they can stay in the college football playoff discussion and all that. That was my general point. But thank you for listening to the show. Always appreciate your feedback. You can disagree with me, obviously, and come back and be on YouTube. That's fine. In the YouTube comments or on Twitter, at SimcockSteven. TCU Baseball's 13-0. Conference play starts Friday. I mean, we're right there. It always catches me off guard how quickly we get to conference play in college basketball. So we'll get into that next. Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team. We do it here every day. Biggest name in hiring, LinkedIn. Everybody knows about LinkedIn. You know, you go to TCU or any other college, they'll tell you to make a LinkedIn profile. I don't know if they're still saying that. That's what they told me back in 2014. I didn't really listen. It's probably why I'm hosting a minorly successful podcast right now and also have a day job and am not in the, national ESPN radio. But maybe I would have been if I made a LinkedIn job profile. And if you need to hire for your small business, join LinkedIn today. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. When you're hiring for smaller business, you want to find quality professionals that are for the right role. That's why you should try out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals. It's not just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It also gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. Hiring is easy when you have so many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, as always, they do apply. I didn't get to talk about this yesterday. I mean, I guess I could have, but I went a different direction with the show. TCU Baseball, they defeated Abilene Christian 4-0. Kind of had a bullpen day. So I'll do a preview of the Kansas series tomorrow. But I'm interested in what the rotation is going to look like this weekend. Zach Morris had a line drive that hit him in the face, and he had a pretty nasty black eye. So we'll see kind of where he's at health-wise. And then also, just to be fair and to be honest, starting rotation has struggled at times, and you're in the thick of the season now, so you kind of got to figure this out. But they're 13-0. They're still undefeated, and a really good effort by the pitching staff on Tuesday to get out of that game with a shutout. Cademan Parker started the game with 2 innings, didn't allow any runs, had the bases loaded with 1 out, got a couple strikeouts, 3 strikeouts on the night. Jax Traeger had a clean inning. Chase Hoover came in and had a clean inning. Luis Rodriguez. Luis, I think, is going to be really solid for them this year. He's had some hiccups at times, but man, once or twice a weekend, a guy that can give you 1 or 2 innings, I think he's at the top of my list on players that can consistently do that. Hunter Hodges and Kyle Ayers closed it out, going 2 innings apiece and getting the victory for TCU. Hitting-wise, Peyton Tolle had a line drive home run early in that ball game that gave TCU a 1-0 lead. And it wasn't their best day offensively, but they did what they had to do. Chase Brunson had a home run, 2-run jack to give them a 3-0 lead. And then Brody Green had a sacrifice fly. That was the last score, and they ended up winning that ball game 4-0. So KU this weekend, typically TCU is really beat up on Kansas's pitching staff. Not a ton of depth there, historically. So we'll see what they can do in Lawrence, Kansas. Friday's game's at 6 o'clock. I'll have a better or a more robust preview, I guess I should say, on Friday's show. But excited about this team, chance to go and get into Big 12 play for the first time. Opportunity to go 16-0 at the end of this weekend. And then DBU, the Tuesday midweek game. So that'll be a big one for the Frogs. This is Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team. We do it here every day.